Hello, welcome pen friends. Back with another video. This time it's going to be a book video. It's been a while, but I've had this book, Atomic Habits, for about a week now, and I'm super excited about it. And I know that several of you have mentioned that you've either read it already or you're about to read it. And so I thought I would kind of go through some of my thoughts so far and just see where it leads us. I am on chapter 12, so I'm just about halfway through. But I'm actually on chapter 8 in terms of my note taking. So last night I had read ahead a little bit. But the subtitle on the book, it's written by James Clear, and it's Atomic Habits, Tiny Changes, Remarkable Results, an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones. This book makes big claims even on the cover. And so far, it is not a disappointment. It is extremely useful to me. So hopefully, you'll find something in this video that'll be of interest. But just to kind of lay the groundwork in case you haven't seen my other videos, I'm a fountain pen person, especially an ink person. And I found myself kind of late in the year, last year, 2019, feeling overwhelmed with the amount of stuff I'd acquired. Not just pens, but lots of ink samples, tons of notebooks. It's kind of typical in this hobby that we get really excited and we also share with each other. So, we're kind of all in it together too. But I just decided I wanted to change the habit of spending so much money and accumulating more than I can use. When I started to really look at it toward November and December, I realized I got some habits that I'm going to have to study habits. I'm going to have to find out, what's the best way to go about changing these now. Really, 3 years, I sort of practiced spending my pen allowance right away when I got it and that kind of thing. And, at first I thought having a pen allowance was super duper cool and it was really nice. It's a good idea. It certainly slowed me down a little. It was like a speed bump. But it wasn't really working for me. So I know that I wanted to change, but I didn't want to have, maybe I just thought a no spend isn't totally realistic for me. I've got the channel, I review inks, that kind of thing. So I wanted to try something that was really going to work. Anyway, I started hearing about this book. Two places in particular. Tom from Ink Journal recommended it, and then my friend Sharon said she'd gotten it and wanted to read it and was recommending it. So then I started doing what I do, which I started to find out about the person and watch some interviews with James Clear and hear kind of whether I resonated with what he was saying, and I certainly did, and I do. And so right at the end of the year, just under the wire, it was my last purchase of the year, and then it came in on Monday. So I've been just super enjoying it. In fact, it's preempted everything else in the evening, and I've spent some time during the day too with the study of it. So I'm using two things. I'm using my Leuchtturm 1917 dot grid composition flexible cover notebook for the notes, and a pen friend gave me this beautiful sticker, so that's motivating. I like to look at it. And then I'm using my TWSBI Eco with a medium nib and Robert Oster Lake of Fire. So it's a beautiful ink that I love. And this is just an older notebook. It's an Office Depot 3 subject notebook. And a pen friend gave me this beautiful cat sticker too. I was just using that for doing what he calls, let me make sure I get it right, like a habit scorecard. So it's messy, and this book has other subjects in it too, and some other notes that I've been making. But anyway, I'll actually talk about that when I get to it. But I thought what I would do is not try to cover everything I've read so far, because realistically, can't do that. I'm about halfway through the book already, and I'm also backtracking to go slow and really absorb. But I'll get into here because this morning I printed something out from his website I thought was neat. And I'll link you to to James Clear's website as well in the description box. So I printed out this thing right here and glued it or put it in my notebook. It says 10 things this book will teach you, and I wanted to read you that. just to see, you would be able to tell by that whether you're interested. He says, you'll learn these 10 things. 1, build a system for getting 1% better every day. 2, break your bad habits and stick to good ones. 3, avoid the common mistakes most people make when changing habits. 4, overcome a lack of motivation and willpower. 5, develop a strong identity and believe in yourself. 6, make time for new habits even when life gets crazy. 7, design your environment to make success easier. That word, that environment, that's a real critical word in my book. There's so much we can do just by preparing around us. Number 8, make tiny, easy changes that deliver big results. And get back on track when you get off course. Is number 9, sorry. Number 10, and most importantly, how to put these ideas into practice in real life, and much more. So it's awesome. It's exactly what I need, because I have habits that need to be erased or wiped away, and habits that I need to build. And I think we all have that, or like last year and lapped over to the year before, I was really working on losing weight. And so that was my focus. And this year, it's all about saving money and getting out of that situation I put myself in where I get overwhelmed by having just so much stuff. So it's my main goal. In fact, I wrote down 3 goals in the front, or I wrote down what I want to get out of reading this book is I want to learn how to save money. Whatever habit help I can get with doing that. Stop over-acquiring pens, ink, notebooks, etc., and keep life fun. So that's what I tend to do, is not be black and white, all or nothing, shut down the whole thing. No, this is a fun hobby, and I want to be here. And I also want to just modify my behavior and do things differently. So in the introduction, that's where my notes begin. He talks about the fact that he had a severe injury in high school and how it took small habits, millions really of actions over and over for him to recover. It was quite a story. He has quite a personal backstory. And then he says a habit is a routine or behavior that is performed regularly and in many cases automatically. And that's something we get into when we start studying our spending habits or our acquiring habits. It's very interesting. So he talks about a 4-step model of habits, and this will go throughout the book. That you get the cue, and then you get the craving, and then you have a response or behavior, and then you get the reward. Well, there's more to it than that. There's times when the reward can show up earlier and so forth. So it's very interesting. And he also says he's going to talk about the influence of both the external things, like our Instagram feeds and our world around us, and then also our internal, our emotions and the part they play. And that's important, I think, to look at both. So then I just love it, and I'm not sure if it was in the introduction, but I wanted right in the front of my book to have a little chart here where he talks about the 4 laws of behavior change. And so if you're going to build a new good behavior, it goes like this. Number 1, make it obvious. Number 2, make it attractive. Number 3, make it easy. 3. And number 4, make it satisfying. So then on the other side, if you're going to break a habit, it's law number 1. You have to invert all that. And number 1, make it invisible. Number 2, make it unattractive. Number 3, make it difficult. And number 4, make it unsatisfying. So he had me at the introduction, in terms of this sounds truly, it just resonates with me right from the start. And I had to read more. I had to read it, period, because it was really cool hearing him talk in different YouTube videos. And I recommend that if you're trying to decide whether the book is for you or whether you resonate with his ideas. He's been interviewed a lot on many different YouTube channels and so forth, and you can get a real good feel for that. So chapter one, he used 2 really interesting examples, I thought, of how small changes, little tiny incremental changes made huge differences. The first was the example of the British cycling team, how they really hadn't had a win in many, many years, and then they got a new, what did they call him? I'm not sure, some sort of a training manager or something, David Brailsford, and he wanted to break everything down and have them make 1% improvements in every aspect that had to do with riding their bikes, getting the right rest, the whole 9 yards. And they made just extremely numerous changes. And then it says here the result was extreme positive medals at the Olympics and records were set. I mean, it was just really, really cool. So the quote from James Clear is the difference a tiny improvement can make over time is astounding. And that just rings true. It does, because we kind of know that, let's use the example of money. We kind of know that if we save $25 a month, it doesn't feel like anything that first time, but over time it makes a big difference. It does, but we don't see it right away. In fact, he says that. He says your small changes like that are not noticeable at first. So, just be aware of that going in, that it's not at first. So then the second example I just loved was how, if you have a cube of ice on the table and you want it to melt and you keep lowering the temperature 1 degree at a time, you're all the time, not lowering, the opposite, raising the temperature 1 degree at a time, but all the action starts at 32 degrees. Well, that really resonated with me because of back when I was helping my dad and we were watching that temperature for ice on the road. And it's just extremely important up there in northern Vermont to be aware of the road condition. You can't see black ice, but you have to be aware there might be some when the outdoor temperature is below 32. So this is the opposite, but so interesting. And he talks about how we enter the valley of disappointment until our outcomes start to show. And I did have a pen friend recently, tell me, just be aware that at first it's going to seem like nothing's happening, And I thought, I puzzled over that, but I thought, well, it sounds like he knows what he's talking about and probably has been through it. And probably was referring to the saving of money because, small, it's like the reverse. Instead of when it comes in every month I purchase, I put that amount away. And it doesn't seem like much right now. In fact, it's like it almost makes you feel like nothing is happening at all. But all the action, you just got to give it time. So I also wrote down from page 23 that it's important to think about the difference between working with your goals and working with your systems. Because he says that the goals have to do with the results. And that's good. That'll set your direction. That'll set where you want to go. But it doesn't do a whole lot about how you're going to get there. So the systems or the habits, the processes, that's what determines whether we make progress. So this is just, that's just chapter 1, just amazing stuff. And he spends a lot of time talking about the problem with goals, the idea that everybody has goals. Both winners and the losers had the same goals. And number 2 in that problem with goals really struck me because he says achieving a goal is only a momentary change. If you clean your room, it won't last without habits to sustain it. Well, that's the same thing that happens with weight loss. And I have for over 6 months now been in the maintenance mode versus weight loss, active weight loss mode. And I have noticed that, you have to sustain all those healthy behaviors, and there's not that motivation on the scale really. And the scale's a bad indicator anyway. It's just a basic guideline. When I'm looking at my fasting interval and my number of carbs, that's where the meat of my behavior is. But okay, let's see. Read my own notes. I could forget that I'm actually taping. So chapter 2, there's a lot of good stuff too here about 3 layers of behavior change. And so in the middle lies our identity, our beliefs, our judgments, our viewpoints, and then in the middle ring is our habits and systems, our processes, and then on the outside, that's our outcome or results. And so he's talking about outcome-based habits versus identity-based habits. That it should be, we should start with who do we want to be. And I have the notes like that somewhere here. Maybe on the next page. Yeah, here it is. He says on page 39, sorry. There's a 2-step process to change. Number 1, decide the type person you want to be. Number 2, prove it to yourself with small wins. So I love that. I could look at that every day on an index card. In fact, some of this I think I'm going to put on index cards. I think it's going to be more important for me to have this stuff obvious than in this notebook. But this is great because this is a good launching pad for it. Yeah, example, or at least I wrote this down. This wasn't in the book. Who is the type person who would have no credit card debt? Who is the type person who would have a reasonable number of pens and inks and not an overwhelming amount? You know, these are just my beginning toying around with these questions and these this new way of thinking, this mindset. And he said, identity change is the North Star of habit change. Who is the type, and I wrote down, who is the type person who would have money and savings and not overspend? So, I mean, it's wonderful because anything that'll move our furniture of our mind around, that's the beginning of change. That's good. It all starts in the mind. And the mindfulness of what we're doing, which is going to, in a moment here, lead me to the next notebook. But so, let's see, the habit. Okay, there's a little thing called the habit loop. And I like that. And that kind of put, let's see, it's right here. Hopefully you can see that. And then I'll talk about it. He says that you've got the cue, that happens first, then the craving, then the response and the reward. It's a habit loop, like a feedback loop. And of course, some of these early chapters are laying the groundwork, just really laying the groundwork. But on page 62, this was for this week, for me, this was the number 1 exercise that I really got a lot out of. Was he calls it a habits scorecard. List all of your actions and habits and then rate each one. If you feel like it's a good habit or action that you took, put a plus sign. And I used like a red pen, a G2 to go back in and do that because this paper is super thin. Bad habit, put a negative sign or minus, and neutral, put a equal sign. So that's where this notebook came in. One day I took, all day long, I kind of scrawled down notes about what I was doing. You know, and I got a real good idea of my morning routine, which I knew already that I spent a significant amount of time with my cats in the morning, feeding them, you know, spending time with each one of them and all of that kind of thing. But it's so interesting how quickly I picked up on checking my email. The first time I did really good, and I gave that kind of a neutral mark because I just checked it and it didn't have what I was looking for an email, so I left the computer alone. That was it, you know. In fact, I went and plugged the phone in another room and it's continuing on with the cats. I wrote in my gratitude journal. That's something I like to do in the morning. You know, started to hydrate, which I've got water there because sometimes I start coughing during these videos. Got dressed, took a shower. Well, not in that order. Shower, dress. All cats are still restless. Well, that doesn't have much to do with me probably, but that's so funny. Wash the morning dishes. Check the email again. Okay, second time. That's when I wrote, because that had only been a little while. And I put a minus there because I felt like, well, okay, that's pretty quick to go back and check the email again. And I wouldn't have told you that I would have checked my email that twice in that little bit of time. Choosing a letter to reply to. Okay, this was a day that I wrote 2 pen pal letters. I caught myself doing all kinds of things during the first 2 hours of the day that I wouldn't have said I probably would do. But in fact, a lot of times I would sit there and say, wow, it's been like 20 minutes since the last time I jotted something down. What have I been doing? Cooked breakfast, and that was quite a bit later in the morning. Instagram scrolling. I gave a minus for that because, well, I realized, I think doing this habit scorecard or whatever they want to call it. To me, it looks more like a mess because I ran a tracker all day on myself and what I was doing. It just kind of, I recognized there were a lot of cues to go deeper looking into products. Like I put down cues to look for cute washi tape. That came from going to Instagram, and I thought, yeah. So I think this is great because it gave me a lot more mindfulness. And this was all real casual. Like it's no big deal. I'm just kind of, hanging out with the cats or in between these different things I was actually doing. It was a real low key day. More like a weekend would be for most people. It was one of my more down days. Cleaned 3 review pens, put donations in the car, wrote a pen pal letter, number 2, the second pen pal letter, prepared some things for a video. Then I boxed around where I wrote watch the news. I don't intend to watch the new news. It was on because Manuel was watching it. So that was another area that I became very aware that unless I have a plan, I'm probably going to sort of meander around and whatever I hear or see is what's going to happen, Let's see. It wasn't like being hard on myself or it wasn't a negative exercise at all. It just amazed me how much time gets screen time, actually, whether it's phone, computer, or TV. Just astounding. And I think anybody who did this would probably find that unless you have a solid plan and you're not, you've got something else right in front of you ready to go. Like I like to do my bullet journal the night before, and that helps me because that immediately in the morning, as I'm, when I feed the cats, they're pretty busy for the first 10 or 15 minutes after I feed them. Then I can look at my bullet journal and it completely reminds me of what I intend to do that day and that kind of thing. So those kinds of things got pluses and, and I carried it all the way through. All the way through this, I do an afternoon or late, what it would be afternoon for most people is after supper for us, study session in the book. And then I watched one program with Manuel, did a whole bunch of reading, and then magnesium and lavender, so evening routine. But it was really useful. I like it. I like it very much. The idea of doing that, and I like the idea of looking at a schedule anyway to see, do I have a schedule? And I did have a schedule when I was working at my pen desk, but now my things are really scattered. With the new the new kitten that I have, it has just disrupted my work because usually as soon as the cats were kind of done, for the morning and not really interested in me anymore, I would spend a good solid 2 hours with the pen testing and working toward another review. And it just really has disrupted me having the kitten run through everything. I've got to formulate a new plan, and I will. But let's see, moving on from that part, that was page 62 is what I wrote down. And then, it goes on into the best way to start a new habit. Let's see, that would be page 70, chapter 5. He talks about an implementation intention where you write it down. I will, and I had a sample one somewhere, but I'm not sure where I wrote that one. Let's see. Maybe I wrote it in here. Should be pretty easy, but it's all like training wheels for me right now. Oh, maybe I didn't. I started tracking. Oh, here's one. Okay, here's one. I did this one. After I feed the cats, I will read positive, motivating stuff for 30 minutes. That came about because on that one of the days that I did the tracking, I found myself just sort of turning on the Today Show, and there's nothing wrong with the Today Show, but that's not what I intend to do. It's not what I intend to do. There are things I want to either learn about or read about, or there's subjects I'm really interested in, and I don't need programming decided for me by, by the news. So that made me realize, what I was doing. And then habit stacking after whatever your current habit is, I will, and then so you can, this is what he was talking about, is that it's really powerful to add in the new habits with one that's well established. Like, I don't know, even if it's after I drink my coffee, I will, whatever it is you want to do. Because if you repeat those things over and over and over again, it becomes really automatic. So that's so cool. I mean, I'm certainly not trying to teach what he's saying. I'm trying to get it to stick with me. So that's pretty much what I'd written down there. Motivation is overrated. Environment is what matters more. Now that I can say as a former preschool teacher, truer words were never spoken, because that was the very strongest part of my program when I was a preschool teacher, was having that classroom designed for success. You know, not too many overwhelming things out, things organized by the different centers and subjects, easy for the kids, labeled so they could put things away, so they could be successful, and then I could not go crazy. Environment just makes all the difference. And then in those later years, when I first tried to lose weight, was really tried, was 2003 and 2004. And I was reading Dr. Phil's 7 Keys to, I don't know if I still have, probably don't still have that book. No, I don't think so, because I feel like I know it. But it was key 4 was environment, making sure you set up your environment for success. And it just, for a while, that was the only key that I really actually followed, and I lost 30 pounds just with that. So if we can set up our environment, if we can set things up for us. And he used an example of a hospital cafeteria, that they were realizing they had way more sales of soda than water, until they came in and they redesigned where they positioned the water near several different of the food stations, and then their water sales started going up. And so that, that was supposedly, that would translate to a lot better health for the people. They were drinking more water. And then he also talks about the fact that grocery stores place the items right at easy reach level, right at your eye level, arm level. And the examples were for, if you want to remember to take your medicine, put it somewhere that's so obvious you can't miss it. Place your guitar in the living room, that will remind you to play. Keep stationery at hand on your desk. Certainly I've got that on my desk. Place water in good locations. Actually, every morning I put 4 of these out, so that I make sure. I used to try to just keep track, but I don't always keep track unless I have them in a separate place, and I go right to that exact same place every day. It's winter, so I'm not refrigerating them right now. And then it says the most persistent behaviors usually have multiple cues. Huh. Okay, so I started to write down as I've been reading. I don't know about you that are reading the book too. I started writing down questions to myself, like in terms of a pen and ink spending. I wrote down, how can I reduce my exposure to new pens and inks? Because there's nothing like, that discovery in a newsletter or whatever. Oh, there's this new pen out, it happened this morning, actually. I read a newsletter, and next thing I knew, I was down a rabbit hole of trying to figure out whether this pen that was featured is actually being sold yet. And what business do I have to go to eBay to find out, even, because I'm not buying pens, right? Yeah, tricky brain. Like, wow, we're just like monkeys, I think, sometimes. And then, I wrote down, how can I spend less time on pen store websites, Instagram, and emails? It seems very, very obvious, less screen time, get away from the different things coming into your email box. But I don't want an all or nothing life. I don't want to just completely turn everything off. So these are questions I'm asking myself, so that I can tailor for myself whatever will work. And it will. It's just a matter of finding the right thing. I mean, I didn't think that I could lose the weight I lost, and I'm standing at that same ground that I stood last year when I was 2008, really, 18, right? Is when I started. Yeah, August 2018. So now it's starting to be more than a year that I've been doing the intermittent fasting. Well, I didn't know whether intermittent fasting was going to work for me. And I can't know right now today how this atomic habits are going to work. Atomic meaning several, like an atom, tiny but powerful when you add them all together. But I love that I have that same feeling, that open-mindedness and the idea that this might work, and it's up to me to be the student and the practitioner who, we take it to the laboratory of our life and we try it. It may not be for everyone, but it's. I have a really good feeling about this, that he is drawing from so many really sensible sources and putting it all together for us, and that's the best I can do, I think, to make it. It's just I can tell how much I resonate with his ideas. So, and then my notes kind of end on chapter 8. So I've got 9, 10, 11, and I'm reading chapter 12. So I've got maybe 3 chapters to go back in and check and see, because I actually have been underlining and everything and tabbing a little bit. Haven't tabbed as much, but I definitely have been underlining. Lots of stuff. Reframing your habits to highlight their benefits rather than their drawbacks is a fast and lightweight way to reprogram your mind and make a habit seem more attractive. Okay, that was in chapter, so that's going ahead. That's in chapter 10. So, I mean, I shouldn't be in there talking because I haven't finished. I like to do, I think every layer of underlining, tabbing on the sides, note-taking, all of that just reinforces. And talking about it to you really reinforces. And as well, when I used to do Bookstream TV where we talked about each chapter, after I would do it was on Periscope, an app, a live streaming app. After I would talk about it, not only would it reinforce what I did learn, it's funny how it works. It would actually blatantly make me realize, hey, that whole section there, I didn't say a word about that, and that was a really impactful section. So there's no way that I can, say everything I've already been drawing from this. But I thought it might be of interest to some of you who are sort of going along this same path. And I've seen from the comments that I'm not alone in wanting to make some changes and not be completely black or white in terms of all or nothing with the pens and inks. I'm not trying to stop being a hobbyist in the fountain pen hobby by any means. I'm just trying to get more comfortable with the amount that I have and not be overwhelmed, and actually really feel like I'm being a good steward with the ink, and I'm trying it out, and I'm not just having things just sit around, because that I just don't like that. So I never really have. I've always liked to use what I have and not have it just sit unused, even with fancy dishes and things like that. So hopefully this helped you or inspired you in some way. I love reading books. I have made some of the best, decisions, changes, and had so much joy from learning in books. And I really, truly, it's one of the ways I best love learning well, I might as well admit, I have read a lot of self-improvement books, but it's more than just reading. It's all about applying it. So that's what I'm trying to do and talk about and kind of go forward with. So hopefully this has helped you a little bit. I'm going to say goodbye now because it's getting really long. But let me know in the comments if you're reading the book, what are you picking up on? Or is it, have you done the Habits Scorecard kind of a little exercise, or, and anything you want to say about it, I'd love to hear. So I will see you on the next video. Bye for now.